Saturday started like any other. Coffee, laundry, mild annoyance at the weather app lying again. I just clicked open my laptop when my phone buzzed. Unknown number, no ID. I almost ignored it like every other robocall, but something in my gut said pick up. Hello? Hi, is this Renee Adler? The voice was calm. Too calm. Like someone trying to keep a lid on something boiling. Yes, who's calling? This is Trevor from Willow Creek Mortgage. I'm calling regarding your home loan balance of $612,000. I blinked. I think you have the wrong person. I don't have a mortgage. Small pause. The loan is under your full name, birth date, and social. It was opened in February 4 years ago. And just like that, my stomach flipped. 4 years ago was when my little brother Jordan had started dreaming big. A house with a yard, a patio for barbecues, even a golden retriever named Marco. Back then, he was broke, jobless, and sleeping on our parents' couch. I remember him laughing off credit scores like they were conspiracy theories. Our mom said, "Don't worry, kid, we'll figure it out. You've got smart people in this family." Apparently, I was the smart people. I ended the call politely, but my hands were already shaking. I paced the apartment like I'd forgotten how to sit. Then I remembered an envelope one I almost tossed a while back. Willow Creek Mortgage. It had landed in my mailbox months ago and I'd brushed it off as spam. Now I wasn't so sure. I found it buried in a drawer under coupons and old receipts. It was just a flyer, sure, but that name, that company, that timing. My throat tightened. I started digging. Old tax files, copies of my ID, a copy of my social. I'd given these to my family a dozen times over the years for school forms, insurance stuff, car registrations. Jordan didn't know how to fill half those things out. Back then, helping felt like a reflex. Now I realized it was a blueprint. I sat down on the floor surrounded by paper, slowly understanding the worst part. It wasn't just the debt. It was who had done this to me. My family had access to everything. My mom had once said Renee doesn't need help. She is the help. It used to sound like a compliment. Now it felt like a curse. I pulled out an old card from a birthday past. To our dependable girl, it read, "Thank you for always showing up." Showing up, that was me, the backup plan with a heartbeat. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there turning over memory after memory like puzzle pieces that never clicked until now. Mom's sly smile when she said, "You know, Jordan's finally looking at places." Jordan's weird joke about my signature being nice and easy to copy. At the time, I'd laughed. Now I felt sick. Morning light crept in and I had my answer. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice someone made with my name. I called the bank and requested every document tied to the loan. The woman on the phone was professional, but I knew she had no idea what she was sending me would shatter something inside me. A few hours later, the email came. I opened it. There it was, my name, my details, my signature, but not really. It was too perfect, too smooth. My real signature always lagged on the R. This one didn't. It looked like someone had practiced, over and over. I stared at it numb. This was how they did it. Not with violence, not with threats, just with familiarity. Trust. I knew then it had to be Jordan. But I didn't call him. I didn't scream. I didn't even cry. I started building my own folder. Credit reports, identity records, bank statements, every form I'd ever signed for my family. I printed them, sorted them. My life was now divided by paper. What was mine? What had been taken? And then I did something I'd never done before I told someone. Lauren, my coworker, saw it before I said a word. She took me to lunch and asked, "Are you okay? You look like someone just hit pause on your soul." I told her everything. She didn't try to fix it, she just said, "You need help that knows how to handle this kind of mess." Then she handed me a name, David Lynn, private legal consultant, ex-fraud investigator. "Call him," she said. "He's expensive, but he's real." And that's when it all started. The real story wasn't the debt. It was what I was about to do with the truth. David Lynn didn't waste time. We met 2 days later in a tiny coffee shop off 5th Street, the kind of place that served drinks in mason jars and smelled like roasted ambition. He didn't smile when I slid the folder across the table. He just opened it and started reading. Every few pages, he'd hum under his breath. Not judgment, just focus. When he was done, he looked up and said, "You understand the weight of this, right?" I nodded. "It's fraud. Identity theft. At the very least, this could end up in court." I didn't flinch. I don't want revenge. I just want my name back. He sipped his coffee, then said, "Wanting peace and getting it, two different things. What you're dealing with isn't just paperwork, it's betrayal with a signature." He laid out a plan. First step, file a police report, not optional. Then contact the credit bureaus, freeze my accounts, start a full audit of every financial action tied to my identity in the last 5 years. "And you'll need to be ready," he added, "for what happens when your family finds out you're not playing along." That part stuck with me because up until now I always had. I was the yes daughter, the fixer. But this was a line they didn't think I'd draw. By the weekend, I had everything ready. I filed the report with a local officer named Jules, who looked at the documents with tired eyes. "Seen too many of these," she muttered. "Usually it's strangers, though. This is cold." She took the report seriously, photocopied everything, took my statement, promised to escalate it. Then came the harder part, telling them. I hadn't spoken to my family since the bank call. No texts, no calls. I knew they'd act like nothing happened. That's how things always went. Problems were swept under the rug until someone tripped and broke something. I decided I'd go to them. If they were going to lie to my face, they'd have to do it with me, looking them dead in the eye. It was Sunday. Their house still had the same peeling shutters and chipped driveway I'd grown up staring at. My mom opened the door like she'd been expecting me, Renee. Just in time, Jordan's grilling, like we were a normal family, like everything was fine. Inside the house smelled like onion dip and charcoal. Dad was watching football half asleep. Jordan sat at the kitchen counter, scrolling through his phone like nothing had exploded. We had dinner. Chicken potato salad, those same green beans Mom always overcooked. They chatted like a sitcom family, neat, predictable, surface deep. I waited. When the table was cleared, I pulled out the folder from my bag and said, "Hey, I need to ask something." Their eyes shifted. "No panic, not yet. Does anyone here know anything about a home loan taken out in my name?" Silence. Not shocked silence. Calculated. Jordan blinked too slowly. My mom looked at her lap. Dad cleared his throat but didn't speak. I waited. Then Mom said, "Honey, it's not what you think. Jordan needed help, that's all. Just to qualify, you weren't going to be responsible, he was going to pay it. We just used your name for the paperwork." My jaw didn't drop. My heart didn't race. I'd already guessed all of this. What hit harder was how normal they made it sound. Jordan chimed in without lifting his eyes. "You've got great credit." I didn't. Simple math. You weren't even using it. I didn't say anything for a long moment. I wanted to scream. Wanted to throw the folder across the table. But instead I said, "You forged my signature." My mom flinched. "We copied it," she said softly. "That's not the same thing." I laughed. Once, dry and bitter. "You do realize this is a felony, right?" Dad finally looked up. "Don't be dramatic, Renee. It's family." And there it was. The phrase that had justified every insult, every guilt trip, every emotional sleight of hand for decades. It's family. I stood up, not angry, just done. You didn't ask, you didn't tell me, you just did it, and expected me to deal with the fallout. I looked at Jordan. "And you, what thought I'd never find out?" He shrugged. "It was handled." "It's not handled," I said. "It's a criminal investigation now. I filed a report. The bank is investigating the documents. This isn't going away quietly." My mom looked like I'd slapped her. "You went to the police, Renee. That's not how family handles things." "No," I said, my voice steady. "That's how you handle things, by hiding, lying, pretending everything's fine. I'm handling it by cleaning up your mess." I left without waiting for their reactions, got in my car, drove in silence. That night, Jordan texted, "You didn't have to go nuclear." I stared at the screen. No apology, just deflection. I didn't respond. 3 days later, I got a letter from Willow Creek. The mortgage had been flagged for fraud and placed under internal review. The notary who'd signed off on the documents had a questionable history. The loan officer had been fired. It wasn't over, but the system was working. And that meant everything. "I called David. They're moving forward," I said. "Good," he replied. "You've done the hard part." "Which part?" "Stopping the pattern." He was right. For the first time, I'd said no. Not quietly, not with guilt, just clearly. And it felt like breathing after holding your breath for years. 2 weeks passed, and the silence was louder than any argument we could have had. No texts, no guilt-laced voicemails, just an echo of absence where family used to be. But honestly, that silence felt more honest than anything they'd said at that dinner table. I kept my head down, focused on the mountain of paperwork David helped me sort. We were deep in credit restoration, forensic documentation, and tracing financial damage. My name had been used for more than just a mortgage utilities, a credit card I never opened, and a line of credit that had nearly been maxed. Every discovery was like peeling a scab that never healed right. But I didn't flinch. I documented everything, organized it into folders with quiet precision. It felt like I was finally taking control of something they'd yanked from me. And with each email sent, each form filed, I started to feel like myself again. Not the version of me they used like a spare key, but the one I had buried under obligation and guilt. David said I was progressing faster than most. "Most people break before they fight," he said. "You didn't." I wasn't sure it was strength. Maybe it was just that I'd been broken so long I forgot what whole looked like. But there was no room for collapse now. I'd already come too far. Then came the letter from the credit bureau. A temporary hold had been approved. My reports were marked for fraud investigation. It was a start. A small one, but real. I pinned it on my fridge like a trophy. That same day, I got a call from Aunt May. She wasn't really an aunt, just one of my mom's oldest friends. She whispered into the phone like we were planning a heist. "Sweetheart, I don't want to get involved, but your mom is worried. She said you're tearing the family apart." I almost laughed. "I didn't steal from anyone," I said. "I'm just cleaning up the mess." There was a pause, then she said, "I believe you. But I think she's more afraid of what people will think than what she did." That made sense. My mom had always cared about appearances more than truth. I thanked her and hung up. I wasn't angry, just tired. That weekend, I decided to go to the art fair. Something about being surrounded by things people made with their hands grounded me. Clay mugs, wooden spoons, hand-stitched journals. I bought a cheap ceramic bowl with a crack down the side. The vendor smiled and said, "It's stronger now. That's what the gold's for." I turned it over and saw the thin gold seam running through the hull break. It wasn't hidden. It was honored. That stuck with me. That night, I cleaned my apartment. Deep cleaned. Not just dusting. I scrubbed baseboards, rearranged furniture, even vacuumed behind the fridge. It felt symbolic, like I was making space not just physically but emotionally. I boxed up old family photos and birthday cards, not out of spite, just I needed air. I needed to see my life without their fingerprints on every surface. Monday morning, the fallout arrived. My dad showed up at my door, no call, no warning. Just the sound of his heavy steps in the hallway and a knock that felt too familiar. When I opened the door, he looked tired, like something had cracked. He held his cap in his hands like it was holding him together. "Renee," he said, voice low. "We didn't mean for it to get this far." I didn't invite him in, just stood there, waiting. He looked at his shoes. "Your mother's a wreck. Jordan's angry, but scared. You've always been the one we leaned on, you know that." I nodded. "I do." He looked up confused. Like he expected me to fight, to yell, to cry. Instead I said, "And I'm done being leaned on. I'm not a crutch, I'm a person." He looked wounded, like he didn't expect that clarity to come from me. "You always were the strong one," he said quietly. "That's the problem," I replied. "You thought that made me invincible." He didn't argue, just held out a thick envelope. We wrote statements. Jordan too. For the bank. Admitting everything. I don't know if it'll help, but I took it but didn't open it. "You should have done this before I got lawyers involved." "I know," he said. "We didn't think you'd go that far." "You didn't think I'd stand up for myself," I corrected. He nodded once, then turned and walked away. No defense, no final word, just silence again, but this time it felt different. Inside, I opened the envelope. 3 typed pages, signed statements, admissions, dates, details, even copies of the forged forms Jordan had filled out. It was solid. David confirmed it. "This will help," he said, "but the damage is still there. Be prepared for the long haul." I was. For once, I was actually prepared. That night, I slept for the first time in weeks without waking up in a sweat. No dreams of banks or betrayal, just the soft hum of the city outside my window. And the next morning, I brewed coffee and didn't check my phone. I just sat. Quietly, the way peace is supposed to feel. But I knew better than to think this was over. People don't change because they're caught. They change because they want to. My family didn't apologize because they understood. They apologized because they were cornered. And I wasn't going to mistake guilt for growth. At work, Lauren handed me a sticky note that just said, "Proud of you. Also eat lunch." It made me smile. Someone saw me, really saw me, and not just for what I could fix, but for who I was. Whole. Even with the cracks, maybe even because of them. A week later, I stood in the bank lobby, fingers curled around a manila envelope filled with proof-signed confessions, forged forms, ID copies. The banker, a young woman named Celeste, offered a sympathetic smile as she led me to her desk. She had soft eyes and a no-nonsense attitude that put me at ease. I handed her the envelope without a word. She took her time reviewing it, flipping each page carefully like it held weight. Maybe it did. My name was on every single one. But what mattered now was that the truth was finally in front of someone who could do something about it. When she looked up, her voice was gentle. "Ms. Adler, thank you for bringing this. I can't make promises yet, but this strengthens your dispute significantly. Our fraud team will review it in full. I nodded. That was all I needed. I wasn't expecting a miracle. I just wanted my life back piece by piece. After that, things moved faster. The bank contacted me twice in the next 4 days. Investigators asked questions, requested more documentation. I had it all ready. Every receipt, every timestamp, every out-of-place signature. David called it the armor of facts. He was right. Facts didn't beg. Facts didn't cry. They stood firm. And I clung to them because emotions had gotten me nowhere with my family. They didn't hear hurt. They only noticed disruption. And now that I'd disrupted the flow of silence, they didn't know what to do with me. I became the cautionary tale, the one who called the cops instead of keeping it in the family. Word got around. An old cousin messaged me on Facebook asking, "What's going on with your mom and Jordan?" Everyone's whispering. I didn't reply. Let them whisper. I had nothing to hide. If anything, I hoped the truth spread like wildfire. They'd spun the narrative for so long portraying me as dramatic, cold, too serious. But the truth didn't need filters or fanfare. It just needed daylight. Then one afternoon, I ran into Jordan. Of all places, it was the grocery store. I was in the produce aisle squeezing avocados. He turned the corner, cart in hand, wearing gym shorts and that same smug half-smile he always wore when he thought he could talk his way out of anything. "Hey," he said casual, like he hadn't used my name to commit fraud. I straightened slowly. Jordan. He looked down at the avocados, then back at me. "You look good. Strong." I stared. "Is that your version of an apology?" He scratched his neck, avoided eye contact. "I didn't mean for it to get messy. I thought I'd pay it off before anyone noticed." "I was gonna fix it." "With what job, Jordan?" I asked. "You've been figuring things out since college." His jaw tightened. "You don't have to come for me like that." "I'm not coming for you," I said, voice flat. "I'm reclaiming what you stole." He shifted his weight like he was bracing for impact. "You really don't see how this hurt Mom too?" "She cries every night." That stopped me. Not because it changed anything, but because even now, even after everything, he still thought guilt was a valid argument. She didn't cry when she signed off on it. She cried when she got caught. He didn't have a comeback. Just stood there, cart half full of frozen dinners and bottled water while I placed an avocado in my basket and walked away. At home, I told David about the encounter. He listened quietly, then said, "Don't let guilt redirect your clarity. That's how they pull you back in." I knew he was right. Guilt was their currency. And I was done trading in it. The next big moment came on a Thursday. I received an official letter from the bank the mortgage was frozen, pending formal cancellation. The fraud claim had merit. It was progressing. I read the letter 3 times before I let myself feel anything. Relief, not victory, just release. Like my lungs remembered how to expand again. I took a picture of the letter and saved it not to post, not to share, but to remind myself that progress doesn't always roar. Sometimes it arrives quiet in a white envelope with your name spelled right and a stamp that says, "They believe you." That night, I went through my apartment again. This time not to clean, but to reclaim. I moved my desk to face the window. Hung a painting I bought years ago but never put up because it didn't match the family vibe. The truth was, nothing about me ever matched that vibe. I wasn't the reckless dreamer like Jordan or the domestic nurturer like Mom wanted me to be. I was the quiet one, the steady one, the one who didn't break dishes or make messes. But silence isn't safety, and steadiness isn't the same as being okay. Lauren came over that weekend. She brought Thai food and a bottle of wine, kicked off her shoes, and flopped onto my couch like she belonged there. "You seem different," she said between bites. "Lighter, like you finally stopped dragging something heavy." I nodded. "I think I stopped dragging them." She raised her glass. "To not being the backup plan anymore." We clinked glasses, and for once I believed it. Later, I walked her to the door. As she stepped into the hallway, she turned and said, "You know what's wild? Most people wouldn't have done what you did. They'd have swallowed it, buried it." You stood up. I didn't say anything at first, just looked past her down the hallway. "I think I stood away," I said. "Away from the lies. Away from being useful, only when they're drowning." She smiled. "Same thing, Renee. Same thing." I closed the door behind her and leaned against it. My phone buzzed. A message from my mom. "I miss you. We all do, so maybe we can sit down and talk, no apology. No ownership? Just a soft pull dressed in nostalgia." I didn't delete it. I didn't respond either. I let it sit there. A reminder that even when they're not asking for forgiveness, they're still asking for access. and access to me was no longer free. That night, I lit a candle curled up on the couch with a book and listened to the city hum outside my window. And for once, I didn't feel like I was holding my breath waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'd already walked away from the closet they kept their shoes in. What they dropped now, not mine to catch. The weeks that followed felt quiet, not in the way silence used to feel, lonely, empty, but in the way a forest breathes when no one is watching. There was space now, space between me and their expectations, between who I used to be and who I was becoming. I stopped checking my phone first thing in the morning. I no longer jumped at every notification expecting backlash or guilt wrapped in concern. Instead, I drank my coffee while it was hot. I read the news without needing distraction. I lived without waiting for the next emotional ambush, and still they didn't stop reaching out. Messages kept coming, some gentle, some sharp. My mother tried again. I talked to your aunt. She says you've been distant. Please come to dinner. I stared at it for a long moment. Not because I considered saying yes, but because it reminded me how much they relied on pretending things never happened. That was their pattern. Harm, silence, invitation, reset. But I wasn't part of that loop anymore. At work, my days felt lighter. My productivity returned. I wasn't dragging the weight of secrets anymore. Lauren and I started grabbing lunch together again. She called it unpacking the rebuild. I told her that sounded like a renovation show. She said, "Exactly, you tore the place down. Now you get to decide what goes back up." And she was right. I started saying no more often. To overwork, to people who only called when they needed something, to obligations that left me drained. Saying no didn't feel selfish anymore, it felt like truth. That shift showed up everywhere in how I walked, how I spoke, even how I laughed. I stopped apologizing for taking up space. One Saturday, I went back to the art fair. The same booth was there, the one with the cracked pottery. I picked up another bowl. The artist recognized me. "Back for more beauty in the broken?" he asked with a grin. I smiled. "No, this one's for someone else. A reminder." He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. I boxed it carefully and mailed it to my old address, the house with the chipped driveway and the front steps that always creaked. I didn't include a note. Just the bowl gold seam and all? They could figure it out if they wanted to. Or not. Either way, I had said what I needed to. A few days later, a letter arrived in my mailbox. Handwritten. No return address, but the penmanship was familiar, my mother's. I opened it slowly, half expecting a list of reasons why I'd overreacted. But it wasn't that. It was just 4 lines. "We don't know how to fix this. We're scared you won't come back. We were wrong. I was wrong." That was it. No manipulation. No excuses. Just a sliver of something that might have been regret, or fear, or both. I didn't write back. I wasn't ready. Some wounds don't need stitches. They just need time and distance to scar in peace. David called a few days later. "The mortgage is being voided, legally annulled. They ruled in your favor." I blinked. "Just like that," he chuckled. "Not just like that. That was a mountain of work." "But yes, you're free." I whispered, "Thank you," but it didn't feel like enough. This wasn't just paperwork. This was me unstuck from something that tried to define me. I took the rest of the day off. Bought flowers from the corner stall, yellow tulips and white daisies, set them on the kitchen table beside a fresh candle and my favorite mug. I took a picture not for social media, but for me. Proof that quiet wins are still worth remembering. The next morning, I deleted all the voicemails I'd saved just in case. The angry ones, the pleading ones, the ones that started with "Listen, Renee," like they were about to teach me something. I let them go. My voicemail box had become a museum of manipulation, and I didn't want to curate that anymore. It wasn't about being unforgiving, it was about choosing peace. And peace, I was learning, didn't come with explanations. It came when you stopped looking back and started living forward. I started volunteering at the library again. Saturday mornings, story time with kids whose eyes lit up when I read in silly voices. It felt grounding, honest, no pretense, just laughter, curiosity, and crayons on the carpet. One little girl asked if I was a teacher. I said, "No, just someone who likes stories." She nodded and said, "That's good. Stories are where truth hides." I smiled, stunned by how right she was. The truth was, I'd been telling myself stories for years about duty, about being the strong one, about how love meant sacrifice. And like all stories, some parts were fiction. But now I was rewriting them, one chapter at a time, on my terms. Spring crept in gently. Warm breezes through open windows. Trees budding with new leaves. I planted herbs on my balcony, basil, mint, and rosemary. Watching them grow became a ritual. A reminder that even when the past is messy, the present can bloom. And it did. People started noticing. Noticing me. Not the fixer, not the background support beam. But the woman who said no. The woman who walked away and didn't crumble. At work, my manager asked if I'd be interested in leading a new project. I said yes, not because I needed to prove anything, but because it excited me. Because it was mine. One night, I stood by my window with a cup of tea watching the city lights flicker like stars that didn't need darkness to shine, but deny. And I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Jordan, not at my parents, not even at myself. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't waiting for another apology or another chance. I just was. And that, more than anything, felt like freedom. It was late April when I saw them again. I had just finished setting up my small booth at the weekend market, a display of ceramic cups and uneven bowls, all handmade in the quiet hours I used to spend overthinking everything. People drifted past, admiring, chatting, occasionally buying. I didn't need to sell out to feel accomplished. Every piece on that table was something I shaped myself. With clay, with breath, with stillness. Around midday, I felt a shift in the air. The way people stopped glancing and started avoiding. I looked up and there they were. My parents standing across the plaza, just close enough to be seen, but not close enough to start a scene. My mother's hands were tight around her purse strap. My dad looked smaller than I remembered, and Jordan was beside them, arms crossed, face unreadable. They didn't move, neither did I. Minutes passed, maybe more. Eventually I walked over, not fast, not hesitant, just present. My mother blinked first. "Renee," she said softly, voice almost lost beneath the noise of the crowd. I waited. "We didn't know how else to reach you," she added. "I've been reading your messages," I said. Ignoring is a form of reading. My dad nodded once as if that made everything make sense. Jordan stayed silent. "We wanted to say we're sorry," my mother continued. "Not just for what we did, but for how long we didn't see you." I didn't rush to respond. Apologies are easy, change is not. "I know," I said finally, "and I hope you mean it. But I'm not coming back to who I was before." "You don't have to," she said a little too quickly. I looked at them carefully. 3 people I once loved without question. 3 people who taught me in their own way that love without respect is just control in prettier clothes. "Family is supposed to lift you up," I said. "Not climb on your back while you pretend it doesn't hurt." My father looked away. Jordan shifted uncomfortable. I'm not asking for a scene, I added. "I just want you to know I've built a life that doesn't require constant repair." "We're trying," my mom whispered. "Trying to be better." I gave a small nod. "Then try, but from over there, I'm not a backup plan anymore. I'm not the safety net. I'm the one who got out." They didn't argue. That I noticed. They just stood there quiet, unsure of their place. Which was progress in a way. I turned and walked back to my booth. Didn't look back. Didn't feel the need. I wasn't carrying them anymore. I wasn't carrying anything that wasn't mine to hold. Later that evening, after packing up my booth, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea. The city was soft, glowing alive. My hands smelled faintly of clay and lavender soap. I watched the sky melt from blue to gold to gray. I didn't think about what they were doing, or whether they meant every word. I just sat and breathed. In the weeks that followed, the messages stopped. The silence returned, but it was a different silence now, not the loaded kind, not the silent treatment. Just stillness, distance. I could live with that. I chose it. I signed up for a local pottery workshop. Not to teach, just to create. For no reason other than joy. One of the women there asked about my pieces. I told her I liked imperfect shapes. Things that didn't pretend to be perfect. They remind me of people I said. She smiled. The best ones always do. On the anniversary of the day I got that first phone call, the one that shifted everything I did. Something simple. I woke up early, made pancakes, sat on the floor with my plate because the sun hit just right there. No drama, no candles, just acknowledgement. That life can change in an instant, but healing takes deliberate, slow choices. And that I had made them. That night I pulled out a journal. Not the one I'd filled with legal notes and case numbers. A new one. Clean pages. I wrote this story began with someone stealing my name. It ends with me reclaiming every part of it. And then I kept writing. Not to explain myself, not to warn anyone, just to remember. Because the truth once spoken has its own gravity. And I had finally learned to speak mine. I didn't need a final confrontation. I didn't crave revenge. The best justice was how well I slept, how full my fridge was, how light my chest felt, and how I no longer flinched at the sound of an unexpected phone call. One morning I passed by the bank on my way to the market, the same branch where Celeste first scanned my documents and looked at me with a mix of curiosity and concern. I thought about going in to thank her, but then I realized I didn't need to. That version of me, the one who walked in trembling, needing validation, didn't exist anymore. She got me here, and now I could take it from here. As I crossed the street, the light changed and I moved forward, steady, clear, and finally mine. Story 2. When my sister Catherine abruptly claimed she could afford her ideal wedding, I should have known something was wrong. She was crying over money just 4 months prior, claiming that she couldn't afford anything else and would have to make do with a modest wedding in her backyard. She was now organizing the most extravagant wedding our town has ever witnessed. The stately mansion where the wedding was held was expensive to rent alone. The attire, a 5-course gourmet meal, and a premium open bar were all included. Oh, the gown. She had been discussing the designer gown all morning. In the bridal suite, she spun around in front of a full-length mirror. The fabric's tiny beads are exquisitely capturing the light. "Isn't it beautiful?" Spinning with excitement, Catherine said. The fact that I discovered it on discount still amazes me. I made an effort to grin. My mind was racing when I held my 6-year-old daughter Christine on my hip. There was a problem. Catherine told me just last month that she was so broke that she couldn't even be named as Christine's preschool emergency contact. She had on a dress now that was more expensive than my automobile. It's stunning. "Samantha," I told her, "you look great." Our mother arched an eyebrow. "You mentioned that it was a sample dress, right?" After a little moment, Catherine's smile returned with much more vigor. "Correct, a sale of samples. I intended just that." In the mirror, I saw her adjusting her veil. I wanted to believe her, but I had a gut feeling that something wasn't quite right. A month ago, she had no money. From where did it all originate? Then my bridesmaid dress was pulled by Christine. "Mom, it appears to be the dress from your special box." When I saw the beautiful box, my heart fell. Christine brought up my grandmother's antique jewelry box, the one in which I had spent the last 3 years concealing my savings. For Christine's ear surgery, I had been surreptitiously saving money. Her insurance won't cover the whole cost of her hearing issue. Since my ex-husband is still suing me, I knew he would try to steal the money, so I kept it hidden. "What's that unique box, dear?" I asked, attempting to seem calm. "The one with the photographs of all the money. The one that was vacant the previous week." It felt like everything was closing in on me. The air was heavy. Although I believed I could have moved the box incorrectly, I had noted that it felt lighter. It made sense now. As I gazed at Catherine, my heart raced. I already knew the truth, even if I didn't want to believe it. A few days ago, I felt that something wasn't quite right when I checked the box. I didn't have time to count the money, but it seemed lighter. Due to the impending wedding, everything was extremely hectic. I ignored the thought because I had too much to do. It struck me once more as I stood there in the bridal chamber. "Catherine," I said, hardly raising my voice above a whisper. "In reality, where did you obtain the funds for this wedding?" Her face went white. Before she could speak, she appeared to be still like a statue. With her typical vigor, our mother hurried into the room. She said with a smile that it was 8 minutes to showtime. Everyone forms a line. The hour that followed was a haze. I wasn't actually there, but I did walk down the aisle. My mind was racing as I stood through the ceremony. I pretended that nothing was wrong while I smiled for pictures, but my chest was constricted the entire time. During the reception, my only thought was of my sister dancing in a dress that may have been purchased with the money I had saved for my daughter's surgery. I couldn't stop thinking. I mentally repeated what Christine had said. The previous weekend, Catherine had visited my home. She expressed her desire to assist with wedding-related tasks. She was determined to assist me with organizing and packing. She once claimed to have gone upstairs in search of my makeup bag. She was gone for about an hour, though, now that I think about it. Then the speakers blared the DJ's voice. "The speeches are about to begin." I glanced in Catherine's direction. She was beaming with happiness as she laughed with her new husband. All I saw was the glimmer of stolen bliss, but they appeared to be the ideal pair: the large space, the elegant cuisine, and that clothing. It didn't appear to come from someone who had been impoverished. Christine, my young girl, was sitting quietly next to me at the head table just a few weeks ago. Her small hearing aids were behind her ears and her face was framed by her lovely hair. They were helpful but insufficient. As she grew older, she would have the opportunity to hear clearly thanks to the operation I was saving for. With his champagne glass in hand, the best man rose to make a toast. But before he could speak, Christine pointed and took another glance at Catherine's clothing. In her little voice, she said, "Mommy." It is identical to the image, the one from your unique package. For my ears, the one with all the money. There was silence in the room. Over 280 individuals gazed at us. Catherine stopped. Her glass was suspended in midair. I inhaled deeply before speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Christine, regarding Mommy's unique box, what do you mean?" Christine was not at all slow. "The box containing the money images, Andy. Last week, Dorothy counted them in your room. In her purple bag, she placed them." Catherine's elegant dress swished loudly as she leapt to her feet. "She's just a kid," she blurted out. Christine continued even though she had no idea what she was saying. She spoke in a quiet but distinct voice. "Mommy, you said the photos would help me get my ears fixed. However, they are no longer there, and Auntie Dorothy is wearing a lovely dress." I felt something shatter inside. All those long evenings at the hospital came to mind. I sacrificed everything, even extra shifts, to save every penny and save money for Christine's surgery. I was now staring at the one who had stolen everything for a wedding. Slowly, I got to my feet. There was no sound at all in the room. Everyone was observing. "Catherine," my voice was louder than I intended when I spoke. "Would you like to tell everyone how you found the money to pay for this wedding? Or should I explain to them that last week, $16,000 vanished from my daughter's surgical fund?" The room was filled with gasps. They started whispering to one another. Catherine's new husband was staring at her with a surprised expression. Our mother's glass of champagne fell. It hit the marble floor with a loud shatter. I intended to repay it. Catherine sobbed, tears welling up in her eyes. "Following the honeymoon. You must comprehend, my ideal wedding was this one. My daughter's dream was to get surgery." My voice broke as I said, "This is her one opportunity to hear better, to lead an ordinary life. You took that away from her too. How were you able to?" The best man returned to his seat slowly. He remained silent. Forgotten the microphone remained in his grasp. Timothy, Catherine's husband, stood rigidly next to her. He had a pallid face. "Which surgical fund?" His tone was forceful but quiet as he asked. "You did what, Catherine?" I took my handbag out. My hands are trembling. I opened the folder on my phone after taking it out. Pictures. I had retrieved the savings log in which I had noted each deposit for the previous 3 years. I showed Timothy the screen. "On the day you came over to assist me with getting ready for the wedding, would you like to see the precise amount that vanished?" I inquired. My voice was hurting. Timothy gazed intently at the pictures. A screenshot from my front door camera, a photo of my grandmother's empty jewelry box, and even my logbook notes. Catherine was plainly seen leaving with her purple purse. $16,000. Timothy muttered. "For this wedding, you embezzled $16,000 from your niece's operation fund." Catherine was unable to respond. All of the falsehoods she had painstakingly constructed around her ideal day were crumbling in front of everyone, and her makeup had melted down her face. She made an attempt to take Timothy's arm. "I can explain, baby, please." I had to be desperate. I murmured, clutching Christine in my arms, desperate. "When you reserved that 7-star honeymoon suite or ordered the $3,000 bridesmaid outfits that we had to pay for ourselves, you were desperate." After remaining silent up until this point, our mother suddenly spoke. She moved in between us. Her hands trembled. She said, "There must be some mistake." Catherine would never do that. She was unable to play the video for them, Mom. Somehow Christine's tiny voice broke through the strained silence as she said softly, "The one that came from your unique camera." Catherine jerked her head up. "Which video?" I opened a new file on my phone after unlocking it. I put security cameras throughout the house for protection after my divorce. There was unambiguous video evidence from last week, but I never imagined that I would need them to keep us safe from my own sister. In my bedroom, Catherine was seen on camera silently pulling drawers and looking about until she came to my grandmother's old jewelry box. The timing on the screen precisely corresponded to the moment she claimed to be searching for my makeup bag. She gently replaced the empty box after opening it, counting the money, and stuffing it into her purple bag. I set up the cameras to keep my ex away from us. I must have needed them for something else as well, but I said it gently. Everyone was silently watching. The sound of the video playing was the only sound in the room. Undoubtedly, the video departed. Timothy took a step away from Catherine and gazed at the TV. He then put his wedding ring on the table after taking it off. I am unable to. This is unbelievable. You told me that the money came from your parents. It was an early inheritance, you said. I gave a headshake. Parents are barely able to pay their mortgage. To keep solvent, they had to refinance the house last year. One more untruth. Catherine. After sitting in stunned silence, our father abruptly sprang to his feet. The mortgage. How were you aware of that since I've been assisting them with their monthly payments? I said as Catherine informed them that she was unable to provide assistance. Whispers began to circulate the space. As the reality continued to emerge, the guests turned to one another in shock. Piece by piece, Catherine's idyllic wedding was disintegrating. In front of everyone, the web of lies she had constructed was collapsing. I'll reimburse you. Catherine's tears fell. Her cheeks were black with mascara which spilled onto the dress. She used stolen funds to make the purchase. I promised to repair it. However, nobody appeared persuaded. I'll borrow money. Put in more hours. Anything, Catherine pleaded. Don't ruin my wedding day, please. Timothy laughed bitterly. Sabotage your wedding. That's what you did? The time you decided to use deception and theft to begin our marriage. Christine softly tugged at my clothing at that moment. Mom, softly, she inquired. I still get my new ears, though. Like a dagger, her words sliced through the cacophony of the room. The change was palpable. With the exception of a few guests' soft sniffles as they wiped their eyes, the room was quiet once more. My daughter's basic desire to be able to hear clearly was dismissed in favor of someone else's champagne tower centerpieces and expensive shoes. What sort of surgery is required for her? Timothy's tone changed as he asked. His tone had changed to one of seriousness, composed yet forceful, as if he were accustomed to speaking the truth. I mentioned cochlear implants. Only a portion of the cost will be covered by insurance. After 3 years of saving, we needed an additional $16,000 to cover the cost of the surgery and recuperation care. Timothy took his checkbook from underneath his jacket. He said, I'll write you a check right now. Think of it as a wedding present or more akin to a settlement after a divorce. With a gasp, Catherine ran to him. No, please, Timothy. This is something we can resolve. We can discuss it. What should be fixed? As he moved away from her, he spoke. The lying, the stealing. The point where I discover my new wife embezzled funds intended to support a child. Right here. Nothing needs to be fixed. In an obvious attempt to keep everything together, our mother intervened one final time. Perhaps we should all relax. Eat some cake. Later we may discuss this. Later I raised my voice and asked, the best moment to discuss how your daughter stole from her own niece after they had done shooting wedding pictures is when everyone around us had stopped moving after the honeymoon. The band had stopped playing. The wedding coordinator seems perplexed, unsure if the party should go on. Trays of unfinished food remained on the server's feet. By Friday, I would like the money returned. I spoke aggressively. Every last dime, or I'll call the police. You wouldn't, Catherine muttered. Your sister is me. I made eye contact with her. My child was stolen from by a sister. Look at me now, Timothy standing next to me. The check was torn out of his book. He said, I'm making it $21,000. The discomfort is his expense, and the additional amount covers any legal bills. He then looked at Catherine, whom he had married 3 hours earlier. And Catherine, he continued in a steady, icy tone, returning to the house is not worth it. Timothy gave me the check and said, I'll have your things sent to your mother's house. Catherine tried desperately one final time. She sobbed because it was simply sitting there in that old box. It wasn't even immediately necessary. I had planned to replace it prior to Christine's operation. I spoke steadily while glancing directly at her. Next month is when her surgery is planned. At Mom and Dad's anniversary dinner, I plan to break the news to everyone by surprise. Surprisingly, though, your lies have repercussions. Catherine became even more pale. She ran out of things to say and her hands trembled. After standing silently close by, the wedding coordinator finally said something. Should I order the band to disband? Before anyone could respond. Once more, Christine spoke. Despite her hearing issues, her small voice was clear and soothing. Mommy, does that mean I get my new ears now? I was sitting in the hospital waiting room 3 months later, clutching Christine's beloved stuffed animal to my bosom. She was undergoing surgery to receive her cochlear implants at last. Even though my heart was racing, I was grateful. We have reached this point because of all we have experienced, including every tear and every truth. Our town was buzzing about Catherine's wedding. Everyone was aware of what had occurred. The following day, Timothy filed for annulment. An utterly ashamed Catherine returned to our parents' home. The day she had dreamed of became a nightmare. Thanks to Timothy, his check had cleared fast. Christine's operation wasn't the only expense we covered. In order to help her adjust successfully thereafter, we also set up the greatest therapy and recuperation care. I never imagined that someone who was once a part of the same agonizing situation would be able to help. However, life might take you by surprise. Karma has a humorous way of working. As the nurse emerged, I muttered to myself. "Stephen, Mrs. Gently," the nurse said. "Christine had a successful procedure. She's somewhat a lady-dee-dee. She is currently recovering." I exhaled. I was holding without realizing it. The nurse led me down the light-filled corridor. Every stride makes my heart lighter. Once more, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Catherine has another message. "Let me visit Christine, please. I must put things right." I didn't open it. I didn't answer. In the same way that I hadn't returned the previous voicemails, messages, or doorstep calls for the past 3 months, she had made an effort. Some injuries are too severe. Words cannot erase the wounds caused by such betrayals. Christine appeared tiny but incredibly strong when I saw her in the hospital bed covered in gentle bandages. After they healed, the doctor informed me that her implants will be activated in a few weeks. Christine's eyes opened and she gave a small smile. "Mommy," she said in a drowsy whisper. "My new ears, did they give these to me?" I grinned and bent down to give her a forehead kiss. "Yes, sweetheart, and you'll soon be able to hear everything quite well." I heard a sound coming from the hallway while Christine was gradually falling back asleep. It sounded like a quarrel. I was shocked by what I heard as I approached the door. Out there, Catherine was yelling at the nurse. "Only members of the immediate family are permitted in the recovery room, ma'am." "Firmly," the nurse said. "I am a member of the family." Catherine lost her temper. "Her aunt is me. Just let me see her, please." In order to keep Christine from hearing, I carefully closed the door behind me as I entered the corridor. "Why are you here?" I inquired. Catherine had a terrible appearance. The circles under her eyes were black. Her pajamas were old and wrinkled, and her hair was disheveled. She didn't appear to be the same person who had attended her wedding wearing a beautiful outfit. Mom whispered to me that the surgery was scheduled for today. For hours, I've been sitting in my car trying to summon the bravery to get inside. For what purpose, I said icily, take her implants, steal her pain medication, and sell them at another fancy wedding. She grimaced. "I'm worthy of that. I'm worthy of everything. But please, I must put things right." I laughed resentfully. Put things straight. Timothy filled me in on everything. That months had been spent planning this, that before you discovered the money, you made multiple searches of my house in quest of valuables. Catherine, that's not desperation. It's scheduled. That is theft. Catherine sat on the floor against the wall, slowly lowering her head. "I understand," she muttered. "I made a mistake. There was no forgiveness. Mom, the therapist, forced me to see. She is assisting me in realizing how dysfunctional I have become, how being a good person wasn't as important to me as looking flawless. I caused you pain. Christine was harmed by me. I also detest what I did." For the first time in a long time, I gave her a serious glance. I didn't know a proud, ideal sister like this. She had been broken, but we had shared everything as children. Our dreams, our outfits, our secrets. She had begun pursuing a phony somewhere along the line. A life that appeared to be nice on the surface but was actually filled with lies. Christine occasionally inquires about you. I acknowledge it. She finds it incomprehensible that Auntie Dorothy no longer pays her visits. Catherine's cheeks began to water. Tell her what I explained to her, that adults occasionally make serious errors and that they require time to improve, individuals. Catherine's voice was hardly more than a whisper when she glanced up at me. "Do you actually want to press charges?" I took a while to respond. I glanced back at Christine's door before turning to face Catherine, who was sitting on the hospital floor feeling humiliated and shattered. More was conveyed by our silence than by any words. Slowly, I shook my head. Everything I said was covered by Timothy's check. "But the trust is gone, Catherine. You will need to start over if you ever wish to be included in our lives again." Catherine's eyes were filled with regret as she gazed up at me. "Where do I even begin?" I said. "Start by getting real help. Not only the therapy that Mom set up, look for a legitimate program that will assist you in changing. Get a job. Repay Timothy. Don't apologize to me. Show me by your deeds. Show that you are aware of how deeply you have wounded us." At that moment, a nurse emerged from the doorway. "You are needed, Mrs. Stephen." I returned my attention to my sister. "I must leave. I'm needed by Christine." Catherine said a final word as I grabbed the doorknob. "I apologize, Samantha, and I appreciate you not filing charges. I apologize for more than just stealing the money. I apologize for being the type of person who could harm her own niece in that way." Slowly, I nodded. Right now, I couldn't trust myself to speak. Christine was sitting up a bit inside, and when she saw me, her countenance brightened. "I heard voices, Mommy." Was there anyone present? I strolled up to her bedside and brushed her hair over the bandages with gentle care. Just a person learning a very significant lesson about magic ears, my love. She smiled drowsily as she inquired. I kissed her forehead and laughed softly. "No, sweetheart. Regarding something even more significant." How can I improve as a person? I took out my phone and sent our mother a brief message while Christine fell back asleep. Here was Catherine. "Please assist her in enrolling in a legitimate outpatient program. In 7 months, we might be able to discuss supervised visits if she is actually putting in the effort." I felt a mixture of optimism and melancholy as I gazed at Christine's serene face. Life can sometimes teach us the most difficult lessons in the most agonizing ways. Catherine's pursuit of a picture-perfect day had cost her everything. However, something positive had emerged from the devastation she left behind. For the first time, my daughter was able to hear the world clearly. And it was all made possible by the demise of a person who once valued appearance over affection. Then it struck me. Catherine had hoped for a memorable wedding, but it did not turn out that way. Ultimately, we all learned something from her acts that was far more impactful than any wedding speech could have. They showed us that family is more than just words, pictures, and a single ideal day, and that when trust is lost, it creates scars that take a lot longer to heal than any amount of surgery. Story 3. Christina smirked and added, "Painting won't pay the bills." Standing at my tiny art studio's entryway, her long, flawlessly manicured nails drummed against the doorframe. Irritation filled each tap. "When will you mature and find a legitimate job? My friend is worthy of better." I didn't respond. As I worked on the mountain scene, I just continued to apply soft shadows. After being married to Paul for 6 years, I had mastered the art of ignoring her. Her words were like water hitting stone, and I had learned to ignore them. Ruth Kearney is my name. I've spent the last 8 years creating a life that someone like Christina Perry would never comprehend, and I'm 31 years old. I was a failure to her. She was a foolish woman who squandered her time painting rather than working in a suit behind a desk like her ideal son, Paul. Without asking, she always gave me the look that I didn't belong in their world. She entered the space. On the wooden floor, her pricey heels clicked sharply. "You know, Ruth," she added, seeming to be kind. "Paul's company has a fantastic job opening. A good office job. Something worthy that you ought to use. You would benefit from it." I lowered my brush lightly onto the table and inhaled deeply. "I appreciate the suggestion, Christina, but I'm content with my current career. I'm content with my artwork." As if it were a piece of trash someone had thrown away, she rolled her eyes and picked up one of my little canvas paintings. "Bills are not paid by happy. A better life is what my youngster deserves." She gestured to everyone in the studio. "This is merely a pointless pastime. Instead of hiding in here like a child, an adult lady should assist." If only she were aware of the reality. I had been using a different identity to sell my paintings online for years. I had developed a sizable fan base. I had sold my artwork to collectors and had it displayed in modest galleries. Paul pleaded with me to keep it a secret, but I was quietly becoming successful. He would say my mom is outdated. She won't comprehend. Christina's keen eyes swept the room as if she were observing a disaster that needed tidying up. It was a sanctuary of calm and security for me. The windows let in a flood of light from the late afternoon sun. The scent of fresh canvas and paint filled the air, but it seemed like a waste of room to her. "At the very least, paint something nice." She shrugged. "Flowers are liked by people, therefore paint something lovely that people will want to purchase." I didn't answer. I simply gazed at her, wondering how someone could be so oblivious to the important things in life. I nearly burst out laughing. The somber landscape painting Christina simply brushed aside. Its buyer waiting list was lengthy. She was unaware that my work signed under the name Rajani Chokshi was already on display in galleries around the nation. "Sweetheart," she said. She spoke in a sweet, false voice. However, passion is not a source of income. Paul puts in a lot of effort. What do you do too with your paintbrush? You lock yourself in this room. As if she were a young girl daydreaming. I was about to speak when my phone chimed. A note from my gallery showed up on the screen as I lowered my gaze. Is your mountain of interest to a major collector a 7-figure series offer? I put my phone back in my pocket and forced myself not to smile. Call as soon as possible. Christina was completely unaware of it. She was too preoccupied preparing for her big announcement by straightening out her blouse. Paul and I have been discussing your predicament, she remarked with pride as if she were going to issue a regal decree. We both agree that this must stop. Ruth, you need to get out of your fantasy world. I remained motionless. My circumstances. She went on, seeming far too pleased with herself. He agrees with me completely. You are both being held back by your small painting hobby. Although Paul could have been a partner by now, he is constantly forced to defend his wife's choice to dabble with colors all day long rather than working a real job. A chilly rage took root in my chest. There was no doubt that Paul and I would have a serious conversation later. I work as an artist, Christina, calmly I said. She chuckled. Oh, please. How long has it been since you made a sale? Additionally, those small drawings you give your friends for pennies are not included. I gave her a look and said nothing. The private collector in Rome who had recently placed an order for an entire series came to mind. The Boston auction houses and the expanding list of buyers awaiting my new pieces crossed my mind. Paul, however, constantly argued that it was best to keep silent. He told me that it's simply simpler than dealing with Mom. I'm fine, I said simply in response. Her smile cooled and vanished. Not for long, she stated bluntly. Paul has committed to using this area as his new home office. Something tidy, something expert. By the weekend, everything must be cleared away. I said nothing at all. I simply gazed at the area I had created with years of silent labor, love, and paint. My world, my studio. And I was aware that I wouldn't give it up easily regardless of what they said. I halted my motion. My studio is here. I spoke firmly and slowly. Christina shook her head and grinned. Was that your studio? I said. She said, Paul's new office furniture has already been ordered for the next 6 years. I had said nothing. I allowed her to say hurtful things about my artwork. When Paul advised me to maintain the calm and not exacerbate the situation, I paid attention. In order to prevent drama, I gave up debates. But everything became evident at that moment. It has been too long since I spoke. No, I answered quietly. Christina jerked her head up. I'm sorry, she inquired. No, I replied. I stood tall and repeated. I gave her a direct glance. This is my personal area. This is what I do for a living. You don't have the authority to decide what takes on in here. Anger twisted her face. Following all that I have done for you. She lost her temper. Paul could have performed better because of you. She rushed over and snatched one of my completed paintings. It belonged to the Mountain series, the same series on which a collector had recently placed a sizable bid. Prior to my reaction, she tossed it to the ground. It ripped through the canvas after landing on the easel's corner. Stop it, Christina, I yelled, but she continued. She picked up another painting. Anger filled her heavy, rapid breaths. She growled, if you refuse to listen to reason. Then perhaps some rough love is in order. As she tore through my work like a whirlwind, I stood still. I had spent hours caring for and feeling deeply about these paintings, and now they are being destroyed in a matter of seconds. She was unaware, however, that this was more than just art. These paintings had actual monetary value, in my opinion. A few even had tens of thousands of dollars. She was also unaware that I had put security cameras in my studio to safeguard my artwork. They were recording every second of her outburst. I carefully took out my phone and pressed the record button to capture the harm she was causing on camera. Retaliation doesn't always involve yelling or fighting. Sometimes it entails maintaining composure and allowing someone to be authentic. At last she halted. She was breathing heavily, her hair was a little out of place, and her face was flushed. She was surrounded by torn canvases and crushed hopes. That's what she believed anyway. She smiled icily at me while straightening her blouse. You can now concentrate on being the kind of wife my son truly deserves, she replied. I didn't blink as I looked into her eyes. I then composedly hit the transmit button on the video message. Christina, thank you. My voice was steady as I spoke. Her expression barely changed. I grinned. For revealing your true self to me. Who am I, Christina? After ruining my studio, she appeared so happy that a proud little smile remained on her lips till my phone kept buzzing. I put it on speaker after responding. She might as well hear what was coming if she wanted to be a part of my life. Rajani, Chokshi. Ryan from Houston Gallery is here. The collector is prepared to send the 7-figure payment for the Mountain series, the voice stated unequivocally. When is the best time for us to schedule a pickup? Christina's face went completely white. She gazed at the ripped paintings all over the floor and her eyes grew wild. I maintained my composure. Ryan, we've got an issue. I spoke clearly and slowly. A few of those artifacts were intentionally destroyed. I've got the video. On the other end, there was stillness. Ryan's voice then shifted. It got serious. Destroyed. Millions of dollars are insured for those works. Who? This was done by whom I looked across at Christina. She had fallen into the chair in the corner that was covered in paint, hand trembling. She had the appearance of a toddler who had just discovered that the mess she had made would never be cleaned up. She made an effort to speak Russian. Speak to your Russian. She. I gave a nod. I'm still speaking with Ryan. The insurance adjusters should be sent. I'll send the video along immediately. I gave her a direct look as I hung up the phone. Indeed, Christina. I'm from Russia. Last month, she was the artist who sold a painting for $400,000. The person whose artwork is displayed at museums and galleries. The one who, when Paul drives the fancy car you love, boasts about paid for it with a small hobby. Her mouth quivered. However, that isn't feasible. Rajani. Chalk? Yes, she is. That's what I inquired. Accomplished. Honored. A true expert. I gestured to the ripped canvases surrounding us. About $3 million worth of art was just destroyed by you. Artwork that had previously been sold. Artwork that was covered by insurance. She was hardly able to talk. Paul didn't tell me. He knew you wouldn't take it seriously, so I exhaled. Instead of confronting you, he felt it would be simpler to let you think I was only tinkering with paint. And I did what I was told. Both of us did. I laughed dryly. Take a look at where we ended up. Once more my phone buzzed. The insurance firm began to send messages. As Christina's eyes widened in terror, I sent them the footage. Ruth. I was unaware, she muttered. You never cared to ask, so I said, no, you didn't. You spent too much time attempting to dictate to me what a woman I ought to be. Desperate, she reached out. Right now, this is something we can resolve. I'll fix it with Paul. I arched an eyebrow. How much money, Christina? Your property was worth less than those paintings. She straightened her pricey blouse uncomfortably while looking down. Don't tell Paul, please. He would be devastated. I simply stared at her in silence. More than I could say, her shame spoke for her. I exhaled deeply and gave her a direct look. Shatter his heart. Silently, I said, similar to how you two intended to deprive me of my studio, just as you've been living off the money my career generates while mocking it for years. The security system in the studio chimed softly before she could respond. Ryan came from the gallery with the insurance adjusters. Slowly, their gaze swept over the demolished artwork. Their faces became grave. This isn't a coincidence, it was said by one of the adjusters. It is obvious that this is done on purpose. The full cost of the damage will be demanded by the insurance company. Christina's expression collapsed. She appeared pallid. Her hands trembled. Please, Ruth, she muttered. Paul's mother is me. I can't be subjected to this. Calmly, I looked into her eyes. Christina, I'm not harming you in any way. This is what you've done to yourself. Ryan continued to gaze at the torn canvases while he combed his hair. I'll crush the collector, he snarled. These pieces were intended to be the new museum wing's focal point. Christina appeared perplexed. Wing of the museum, indeed, Christina. You termed the Moody Mountain series infantile, and I mentioned that. It was made for the Modern Art Museum's National Light Exhibition. They have been discussing it for months. She finally appeared to realize how serious what she had done was. Tears entered her eyes as her flawless appearance started to crumble. A sob sprang out in her voice. How can I help? She pleaded. Something must exist. I took a deep breath and responded calmly. Leave my studio first. The rest will be taken care of by the insurance company. Christina, too. She raised her head. Never again should you tell me what a true lady should do. She sobbed as she ran outside. Ryan lingered for a while. I'm terribly sorry, Ruth. Answers will be sought by the collector. I gazed at the demolished chamber. In a matter of minutes, paintings I had worked on for years were destroyed. Even so, my thoughts were already racing. I'll make something new tell them. Better still, I said something. Sometimes new ideas come from ruin. I remained in the silence, surrounded by the remnants of my work after everyone had gone. It buzzed on my phone. It was Paul's message. Mom called. She was in tears. What took place? I inhaled deeply and typed slowly. Return home. We need to discuss why you've been hiding my achievement for years and why you told your mother she could use my studio? He immediately responded. I was attempting to keep you safe from her. After staring at the screen, I responded. You weren't defending me, no. You were keeping the truth from her. And now the cost is on both of us. I took another look around the room. Broken indeed. Perhaps now, though, free at last? I felt free for the first time in years. I could no longer hide who I was. I will never longer minimize my accomplishments in order to appease others. I no longer had to keep quiet. I started tidying up my studio's mess. I smiled when I noticed something. Christina had made fun of the big canvas I had been working on earlier, but it was still there unaltered. Secure. A tiny miracle seemed to have occurred, as if the universe had intervened with a hint of irony. At that moment, a new message appeared on my phone. It came from the curator of the museum this time. Heard the events. Regarding the original series, don't worry. A fresh commission would be wonderful. It has to do with resilience and change. Your cost, your timetable. I read the words again to make sure they were real while I gazed at the screen. I then surveyed my shabby, disorganized studio. I felt that same spark of inspiration come back to me. Christina believed she was ruining my artwork. She had given me something more potent, although she was unaware of it. Something fresh to say. I heard Paul's car pull into the driveway as the sun began to set, and golden light poured through the shattered slats. There was going to be another difficult talk. I was aware of that. I knew I was prepared for it, though. No more hiding. No more sacrificing aspects of who I am to appease others. I would never longer allow anyone else to determine my significance. I stood among the broken glass, dried paint, and ripped canvases that night. Paul came to a halt as soon as he entered the studio. When he observed the damage, his eyes grew wide. I saw his face change from astonishment to rage and then to embarrassment. He approached and grabbed up a ripped canvas. He tied his hands around the edge. Silently, he remarked, I never thought she'd actually do this. I'm not sure what I was thinking when she mentioned making the studio into an office. You believe that giving in to her demands was simpler than confronting her. Calmly, I said. To avoid her seeing me for who I truly am, it was also simpler to act as though my profession didn't matter. Paul let out a long sigh. I'll make this right. I'll see to it that she covers all costs. The commission's the harm. She is unable to pay for it. I cut you off, and it wouldn't matter if she could. He gave me a perplexed expression. Then what is it, Paul? This has nothing to do with money. It's about how you've ignored my value for years while defending her feelings. Examine your surroundings. I pointed to the damaged artwork. For the length of time were you planning to convince her that I was merely experimenting with paint? For what length of time would you allow her to treat me as like I didn't exist? There was a lengthy, heavy stillness between us. At last he said, I thought I was keeping the peace. I gave a nod. But at what price? Paul remarked, I never intended for this to occur. I know, I said, but it happened. The next step is up to us to determine. There was a lot of upheaval in the weeks that followed. The claim was promptly handled by the insurance provider. The security footage was clear. Christina suffered more than simply a significant financial loss. She was also embarrassed in public. In the art world, the narrative quickly gained traction. The woman who destroyed priceless artworks in a fit of wrath was the talk of the town. Simultaneously, the reality about who I was emerged. People were now aware that I was a Russian Chokshi. All of a sudden, I was getting requests for new projects, magazine pieces, and interviews. My work and name were all over the place. The project was not abandoned by the institution that had initially commissioned the Mountain series. Rather, they requested something fresh this time regarding devastation and resiliency. In order to transform what Christina attempted to destroy into a potent message about resilience and reconstruction, they even intend to incorporate a video of her tantrum into the display. For a time, Paul moved out. He claimed that he needed time to consider everything. I had things to do, so I didn't protest. My subsequent paintings were different. They were honest, heartfelt, and unvarnished. They related a tale, my tale. A tale of liberation, reconstruction, and rediscovering my voice. A few months later, I was finishing off my recently remodeled studio. Christina was standing in the doorway when she unexpectedly arrived, looking more worn out and smaller than I had ever seen her. She immediately stated, "The insurance company is deducting money from my paychecks." Years will pass before I can repair the harm. I kept my eyes off of her. I continued to paint. That seems reasonable, I said plainly. I've been attending therapy, she added. I've been attempting to understand why I behave in certain ways, why I felt the need to exert control over everything, and why I treated you in the manner that I did. She stopped and took a deep breath. I apologize for everything, Ruth, not just the studio. For every year, I made you feel insignificant. I put down my paintbrush gently and turned to face her. I appreciate you expressing that. I said, however, you are aware that words alone are insufficient. She gave a nod. She had tears in her eyes. She said, I saw your new paintings. The article in the magazine, it was lovely. I had never before allowed myself to appreciate the worth of your work. However, I now get it. I do. For the first time, I can see why people adore it. She didn't sound arrogant or phony. It sounded authentic. I took a while to respond. I realized that everything had changed as I stood there in my new studio. And it was finally for the better this time. The painting in front of me caught my attention. It depicted a phoenix emerging from carefully reassembled fragments of canvas. The bird appeared to be flying from brokenness into light, as bright colors mixed with the dark borders. Sometimes we must lose everything in order to recognize what we already had. Christina remained silent for a moment. Silently, she turned and walked away. I grabbed up my brush once again and went back to work. I had a ringing phone that night. Paul was the one. Can I attend the inauguration of your gallery? Gently he inquired. As someone who believes in you, not as someone who is attempting to shield you. After a little pause, I said, yes. The exhibition opened the following evening. I had never experienced anything like it. Artists, collectors, and reporters filled the gallery. Excitement was in the air. As they gazed at the paintings, people whispered. Others simply stood silently taking in the feelings depicted on the canvas. Destruction and Rebirth was the title of the new series. Through shape and color, suffering and beauty, it conveyed a narrative. People were profoundly affected. It was so real and raw that several people told me it moved them. I was sharing myself, not just art, for the first time. As promised, Paul arrived. He was silent and proud as he stood in the throng, never attempting to steal the show. He made no effort to defend or explain anyone. He just helped me, and I was grateful for that. I came to a significant realization as I stood in the middle of the gallery, taking in the quiet murmur of people and the responses to my artwork. Christina had been attempting to mold me into her ideal lady for years. She attempted to silence me, to take away my work, to take away my voice. However, she handed me something unexpected in the process, my biggest source of motivation. I stood by myself in my studio once more later that evening. It was quiet. The Phoenix picture was gently illuminated by the last of the sunshine as it streamed through the window. Anger no longer consumed me. I felt neither remorse nor resentment. Rather, I experienced an unexpected emotion. Thank you. Thank you for the strength I had developed. I had located a voice for the art that had always existed and was just waiting to be heard. Strangely, even Christina, who had made a concerted effort to erase me, did so, without intending to assist me build the best possible picture of who I truly was: a survivor, an artist, and a woman who at last recognized her value.